welcome everybody to this very special and important event. I'm Madeline Hennigan from Writing on the Wall, and I'm one of your hosts tonight, along with Uma Ramathanan. This is, of course, part of the WOW Festival, and we've had a week of, almost a week actually, it's not quite a week, of fantastic events so far. If you were on our May Day parade on Monday, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, and we've got a host of events to come. The programme is on your seat, and I'll tell you about some more of them afterwards. But this evening, joining us, we have Tonatiuh Lopez, a water protector and key activist within the Dakota Access Pipeline resistance. I can't stress enough how honoured we are to have Thomas here with us this evening. He's flown all the way from Colorado. For the first time, he's gone overseas to be with us here at WOW Festival tonight. And this visit has been made possible through our partnership with AKI and through the support and partnership of the 3 universities. So specifically the Centre for Study of Crime, Criminilization and Social Exclusion at JMU, the School of Law and Social Justice at Liverpool University, and also Hope University. And we're delighted that Joe Sim from JMU has agreed to join us on the panel tonight. Now, the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is planned to run from North Dakota to Illinois through sacred land and threatening to contaminate the water supply along the way, has been given the go-ahead by Trump and the American administration. And this was after the valiant resistance by the Standing Rock community and their supporters. We saw it on our TV screens. And we could see that the resistors faced the full force of the state. Youth leaders like Thomas were often on the front line of brutality, of tear gas, of rubber bullets inflicted upon them by the police. And Amnesty is now reporting widespread human rights abuses for those who were held in custody during that time. And while this might feel like a defeat right now, the significance of the resistance can't be underestimated, and I think that is what we need to consider tonight. Standing Rock became a rallying cry for Indigenous rights and climate change protest and activism, and has been an inspiration to people across the world, really. Here in Liverpool, Facebook was lit up with people checking in to Standing Rock in solidarity with the actions there. And a statement made over the weekend by the Governor of North Dakota in his appeal actually for money from the central government for reimbursement of expenses highlights the significance of the actions that were taken, which he said underscored the changing nature of protest in America. He also said passionate causes, millions of dollars of anonymous protest funding, and sophisticated and inflammatory social media campaigns have forever changed the nature, duration, and reach of unlawful protests. I think that deserves a round of applause, actually. But not that these actions were unlawful, by the way, and Thomas can fill us in more on that when he speaks later on. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Uma Ramathanan from AKI.
Hi, I'm Uma Ramathanan. AKI is an organisation that consists of Anne-Marie Martin, who's sat over there, and Hayley Trowbridge, who's on PowerPoint duties at the back. So Aki means artivism, knowledge, initiative, but it also means ancestor in the Kadazan Dusun language from where I'm from, Malaysia. So it was born out of a project called Sacred Spaces, which was funded by the Arts Council of England. This project was a mixed art project that explored people's connection to land in the UK and involved UK artists and Indigenous Native American artists from the Dream Warrior Collective. Sorry, I have to read off the phone. I'm terrible at public speaking. Aki is building on this. We're providing Indigenous people with a platform to connect with a wider audience, to educate and inform. In that vein, I am honoured to introduce to you a friend of ours and a dream warrior. His name is Frank Warren, and he's from the Tonatiuh Lakota tribe in Rosebud. He's a hip-hop artist, but he calls himself an artivist. And we've got a little special video from him called Oil for Blood, and he's done a little intro, so I'm going to let him tell you what it's all about.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Frank Wan, Tonatiuh Lakota hip-hop artist from the Rosebud Reservation, South Dakota, and this is my song, Oil for Blood. I produced my own music, so I made this beat using a sample of a song from a group called Ulale. They made a song with Robbie Robertson, and so I sampled that song to create this piece of music, and I wrote this song in response to an oil corporation in the US government trying to build a pipeline through our reservation back home in South Dakota. This pipeline was going to be built over the Oglala Aquifer, which is where we got our fresh water supply. This was the Keystone XL pipeline, and it would essentially destroy our fresh water supply. So we were doing all we could to stop it. And at that time, not a lot of young Native people I knew knew about these issues. We didn't know that they were trying to build pipelines through our homes and endanger our water. We didn't know they were extracting natural energy from our land and endangering our health. So this song was mainly just to express my anger and frustration that this is still happening, but also to educate people, Native and non-Native, about what's going on in our backyards, because Native people needed that education just as much, at least young Native people, in my experience, because we didn't have access to that information. We didn't have the privilege to learn about what the government was doing to us at that time. So I wrote this song, and a short while later, I made the music video for it on our reservation, just myself and some buddies. I'm not a filmmaker or director, but I had the idea and I knew I needed to make this. So I borrowed a friend's camera. We went around our reservation and filmed the scenes, and then I taught myself how to edit video and edited it all, cut it together later. So this is my song, Oil for Blood. Everything's red. All red, everything. Everything's red. All red, everything. Everything's red. Everything's red. 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 Dead. Red. Dead. Red. First off, I send love to Lupe for giving us hope in this Lakota Sioux. All red, everything, red nation rising. Revising our story, they're televising. Child of the plains, I see 2020. Poverty, porn, TV, pimpers for money. Held I and Sawyer, I am a warrior. Give me your camera, send power to your lawyer. Free all my people, get them out of prison. Take them to Sundown, show them how we're living. Give youth an outlet, disadvantaged prodigies. Feed these Republicans all our commodities. Put them on the res from the day they're born. They won't survive cause their cancer is airborne. Put them in our schools, put them in our shoes. Take away their money and give them our
everything red. Words of my ancestors up in my head. Food for thought, our kids underfed. Your oil is mud, they want the earth dead. Oil for blood, making you rich, you soil my love. Oil for blood, my mother is clean, that oil is mud. Keystone, everything's red. Pipeline, now everything's dead. Keystone, everything's red. Pipeline, now everything's dead. Everything's red, everything's red. Red, dead. Red, dead. Red. I can't afford to leave the reds. Government has got me trapped. The leadership need a tip, and most my tribal leaders whack. They don't wanna hear that, they just wanna chill. I'm sick, I go to IHS and get a pill. Like a song without a title, feel forgotten, like slaves picking the kind. Forever tribal, with no connection to the Bible. Blind people writing, sometimes I'm suicidal. Feeling like no exit, generation X shit. Text messaging and sex, will I connect with technology? Get this world to acknowledge me. My ancestors studied numbers and astrology. Lakota philosophy, keep them haters off of me. Keystone XL, you smell like an atrocity. To my home and my ancestors, I'm loyal. Build that pipeline and I'm burning down your oil. Oil for blood, making you rich, you soil my love. Oil for blood, my mother is clean, that oil is mud. Keystone, everything's red. Pipeline, now everything's dead. Keystone, everything's red. Pipeline, now everything's dead. Everything's red, everything's red. Red, dead. Red, dead. Red.
That was fantastic, wasn't it? I think one of the incredible things about the resistance is the role that young people are playing, not just in the front line, but as we see with artistic production, and we'll see more of that towards the end of the evening. Next up, though, we have another one of our partners who has helped us to bring Thomas over here tonight. Joe Sim is a professor in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at LJMU. He's a long-standing human rights activist. He's on the board, he's a trustee actually of Inquest, and he campaigns around deaths in custody. Could you give a big round of applause, please, to Joseph?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be very brief because it's Thomas's evening, but we were talking earlier that Thomas said this is the first time he's been in the country, and it's pretty unique because it's the first time he's met Liverpudlians and Scots at the same time, including myself and Dave White this evening, so it's really cool, Liverpudlians, Scots. I've put this quote up here when I was thinking about what I wanted to say, very brief introduction to this evening. I studied this at university, and I thought this quote from Red Cloud kind of summed up the whole history of what's been happening with regard to the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years even, in terms of the relationship between Native Americans and the American state. And that whole history has been built around genocide, violence, destruction, repression, coercion, etc. And I went back and looked at the figures, and there were 10 million estimated Native Americans in the 15th century, and by 1900 there was less than 300,000. And that's very much summed up by General Philip Sheridan when he talked about the only good Indian I ever saw was dead, and that became a part of American parlance in terms of the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And that worked its way into American popular culture. And there's a whole host of popular cultural issues there in relation to what various individuals said. A war of extermination will continue to be waged. Colonists being paid to kill, maim, destroy, scalp the Native American people. And much of that, as Thomas will tell us, much of that was an argument about the environment and the way that the environment became something which the American state colonised through repression, violence, genocide and destruction. And again, as I said, Red Cloud's summary there is a very, very good one in terms of actually showing that relationship between how the Native American people saw the environment and how the American colonists saw. And that led into a whole series of genocidal acts, including some of us may know, and all of us may know, the selling of blankets with smallpox in them in order to destroy the Native American people, because once you destroy a people spiritually, then of course it becomes easier to destroy them physically as well. And the relationship between internal colonialism that happened in this country, because the third verse of God Save the Queen says, "Save us from the heathen Scots." That internal colonialism that happened in this country through in terms of Ireland, Scotland and Wales was then transferred and transformed over through the powers into the desecration and the destruction of the lands. And very interesting as well in terms of the way that, particularly in the 19th century, Native American women were targeted. And interesting, I went back and looked at my records. In 1885, Procter & Gamble produced a soap very much built on the idea that Native American bodies were dirty, filthy, etc., etc. And they described Native Americans just dressed in filthy rags, with their persons unwashed, hair uncombed, and swarming with vermin. And that was a selling point in the 19th century for Procter & Gamble to try and cleanse and purify the bodies. And that worked its way up from the higher reaches of the American state right the way down. So that whole act of genocide was also very much built around gender as well. So there's a gendered genocide dimension to it. It seems to me that continues right up to the present day. So in terms of the contemporary, myself and Dave White, Michael Lavalette, and we were asked to help to support, which we were really pleased to do. We put together a kind of press release. So I've kind of combined the three of them, I think, because I think they sum up very well what the contemporary struggle, given that history of genocide and given that history of colonisation and given that history of violent, total, utter repression with regard to the destruction of Native American lives. But we talked about the present. We thought we would talk about it in terms of the way that this is also a struggle, both about to control the land, but also about climate change and the need for all of us to treat our environment with respect. Political struggle in terms of the relentless degradation of the environment for profit, and it's also a spiritual struggle as well, which goes right back to those quotes with regard to defending consecrated and sacred ground. And you know, when myself and Michael and David put the thing together, we also thought it was also a struggle about equality and accountability. The fact that the states, corporations, and Thomas was talking about it earlier, these corporations with no accountability whatsoever now, in many respects, free and able and willing to do what they want in order to maximise the profit, and thereby destroying the land and the planet and its citizens. And it's also important, as David pointed out in his thing that he wrote, it's also important to learn lessons from Standing Rock to here, in terms of learning lessons for today, in terms of what's going on in Lancashire and Merseyside to resist corporate violence, fracking being a been a very, very good example of that, as David pointed out, and the fundamental threats to our water and our livelihood. So in many respects, given what's happening with regard to false news, fake news, all sorts of other news in terms of the powerful, learning from each other, learning from that social history as well, and learning from our own histories and intertwining those histories with a broader understanding of this violence, repression and utter shamelessness of these people. Learning from that history and learning from each other, I think, is a really important starting point for the way forward, as things may well get much heavier with regard to what's happening here, Europe and North America. So one small step in many respects can take us a giant leap forward to plagiarise Neil Armstrong from 1969. So that red cloud, as I say, that red cloud quote, I think sums it up really, really well. Don't trust them, they lie, they deceive, they're built on deceit, a complete institutionalisation of mendacity, lies and deceit. And that history of the last 500 years in terms of what's happened to the Native Americans really, really summarises that lies and deceit. So I'll be quiet here now, I think, and hand over to Thomas.
So, 2016 was enormous for Indigenous communities. You saw Bertha Casares being murdered. There was COP21, where Indigenous people gathered to bring awareness to how they are the front line of climate change and the effects of climate change. So Standing Rock, I think, is a culmination of all those things to me. So I'm delighted and really, really honoured that Liverpool, in a year when a little tiny place called Gravesend celebrated the death of Pocahontas, Liverpool is offering us and everybody else in this country a radical option to how Native people have the choice to tell their own story. So our next speaker is a college graduate from Metro State University of Denver with a degree in technical communications and Native studies. He spent 4 months in Standing Rock in North Dakota, fighting against the Dakota Access Pipeline with the International Indigenous Youth Council. He has since continued his work with IIYC, building a lasting organisational structure to help inspire young leaders to spark change in their communities through non-violent direct action. It's my pleasure to welcome Tonatiuh Lopez Jr. to Liverpool.
Universtiy. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Tonatiuh Lopez Jr. My mother is waterwoman Sharon Dominguez, and my father is Sundance Chief Tomas Lopez Sr. I'm gonna light some of the sage if you don't mind. I just told some of these stories and they're really heavy. Some of us, a lot of us, all of us that came from Standing Rock are still dealing with extreme PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of historical trauma was brought up while we were there. And this is just a little reminder of home for me. So, just excuse me. I'm very honored to be here today. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I want to apologize to all of my elders in the room. It is traditionally considered disrespectful for me to speak to my elders and speak out. So I want to apologize for that first. Standing Rock. Standing Rock was the turning point of my life. A year ago, I had just graduated from college. I was $20,000 in debt. I didn't have a job anymore, and I went from being at the top of one ladder to being at the bottom of another. And I really began to see the hardships of a young gay man of color, an Indigenous man with an Indigenous name, and how hard it is for us to actually get a job, and how majority of the time when a person sees Tonatiuh Lopez on an application, it usually gets put right behind Kyle Smith's. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know who I was. I knew where I came from, but I was a city Indian. Was a little bit too Indian for the kids in the city, but a little bit too city for the Indians on the res. I grew up, like I said, in the city. I pay homage to my Honka, Shishangu, Oyate, Lakota people, and my Otomi, Mexica Aztec Empire. Come from two of the greatest empires in North America. So, fast forward. It's August. I'm in South Dakota with my family for one of the most important ceremonies for Indigenous people in North America, Sundance. It's our new year. And that was the buzz. The buzz was Standing Rock. Oh, everyone's meeting at Standing Rock. Hey, nephew, let's go to Standing Rock. And I was like, Standing Rock, what are you talking about? Like, those kids that ran from all the way in North Dakota, all the way to Washington, D.C. And I was like, they ran? Yeah, they ran. To let Obama know that we're here. And that we're not going anywhere. And that we've always been here. At that particular time in my life, I couldn't just drop everything that I had, all my responsibilities, and go to Standing Rock. I had an uncle at home that was dying, and this uncle was someone that really instilled my sense of adventure in me. So I had to go home and I had to tend to that. Once my uncle died, I remembered that sense of adventure that he instilled in me, and I knew that this was my adventure. So my parents, who are activists as well, and raised me in a very politically, socially active environment, were a part of the American Indian and the Chicano movement in the 1960s and 70s. During Wounded Knee, my mother was a supply runner for the people and the warriors that were stuck in Wounded Knee. And just a show of hands, do we all know what Wounded Knee is? A few of us? Okay, so Wounded Knee was like the radical, violent version of Standing Rock in the 70s. My grandfather, Leonard Crodog, Russell Means, Carter Camp, and a number of other powerful chiefs came together and in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, right outside of Pine Ridge, South Dakota, in a small church, and put up a fight against the government for, I believe, almost a month. And eventually a FBI member was killed, and Leonard Peltier, who is what the US government considers its only prisoner of war, was arrested. Leonard Peltier, still to this day, is imprisoned by the US government and is actually seeing the last days of his life. So I did what my parents said. I packed a little bag and I went and I bought some stuff for fried bread, and I got some toothpaste for them and just small things that I thought they needed, and I went up there. I had no idea that a 3-day trip was going to turn into 2 weeks. And I got there, and the power, the sense of acceptance, the inclusivity, the feeling that I had of the blood memory was something I couldn't deny. It was something that I knew I didn't have to see to know it was there. So I had to leave after my 2 weeks there. I went back home. I lost my job. And I began to just work specifically for the International Indigenous Youth Council, getting them supplies, firewood, first aid kits, anything that they needed. So I'm sitting on my couch one day, and I get on Facebook, and I had to watch my family and my friends be arrested and brutalized by the police from my couch on live stream. Almost half of the International Indigenous Youth Council was arrested on the raid of North Camp on November 27th. They were brutalized. They ripped down our teepees, our sweat lodges. They pulled us out during ceremony. They broke our chanupas. They stole our feathers. They did everything that oppressive forces do to strip someone of their humanity. Dehumanize them. If you dehumanize them, what we're doing is okay. I could no longer justify that. They were thrown into dog kennels. They said 15 to 20 people per dog kennel. They were stripped naked. Elderly women laying on the floor, no blanket, nothing to wear. And they wrote numbers to identify them on their arms. The last time I know that was done was during the Jewish Holocaust. And I say the Jewish Holocaust because that wasn't the only Holocaust that's happened in the world. We were reliving and revisiting our Holocaust. And I just couldn't justify it anymore. I said, you say a whole lot on Facebook, Tomas. You got them Facebook fingers. But where do your actions actually meet your words? And when are your actions actually going to meet your words? Because your actions, by sitting here on this couch, are not doing anything. So I went to my parents. I asked for their blessing. And within 2 days, I was living in Standing Rock, North Dakota with my brothers and sisters in the International Indigenous Youth Council. That's a mouthful. So, while we were there, when I first went there, I thought I was going to protest, right? And what I really realized is everything that you're seeing up here, well, actually, that's a protest, is not a protest. That was Occupy inauguration for the opposition of Donald Trump's inauguration into presidency. And I realized that we were not protesters. We're not protesting anything. We're protecting something. We're protecting our way of life. Everything in most Indigenous communities and most Indigenous way of life, it's centered around water. In every ceremony that we do, the water is put first, and then the fire, and then the air, and then the earth in which it all sits on. We're protecting our way of life. The Dakota Access Pipeline was originally supposed to be routed about 20 miles upstream from a town called Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck, North Dakota is a predominantly white, middle-class, and upper-class town. Once the people of Bismarck, North Dakota saw the proposed route of the Dakota Access Pipeline, they immediately opposed and ordered that the Dakota Access Pipeline be rerouted. So naturally, they moved it 10 miles upstream from the Standing Rock Dakota Reservation. It's not a matter of if this pipeline breaks. It's when this pipeline breaks. And when these pipelines break, when this pipeline breaks, the Missouri River is the water source for 500,000 people downstream. But what people don't realize is that this is not just going to affect the people downstream. This is going to affect the people upstream, downstream, on the land, to the left, to the right. It will affect the world. The Missouri River also has one of the largest runoffs in the US, running into almost every major river in the United States. So when this pipeline breaks, it will completely devastate and ruin our river systems, turning them into toxic deathbeds. So of course, don't put it in the white community, put it in the indigenous communities. What the political issue is behind it is that the land that they're actually going through is ceded territory according to the Treaty of Fort Laramie. The Fort Laramie Treaty states what exactly the Great Sioux Nation's borderlands are. Well, as many of you know, the US government is terrible at keeping promises and terrible at actually keeping treaties. And they have broken every single treaty they have signed with every single tribe in the US. So this land has been claimed by the US, but is illegally claimed because it belongs to the Great Sioux Nation. If you walk around where Osheti Shakoi was, the Seven Council Fire Camp, you'll see stones everywhere. And all of these stones have a flat side facing east. The Unkpapa people pray to the east. They start their prayer in that direction. The Shishangu Oyate, my people, we pray to the west. This is a sacred burial site for these people. Their uncles, their aunties, their sons, their daughters, their mothers, their fathers are all buried here. Turtle Island, which is an island that you'll see in some of these photographs, is a very, very sacred site for us. The chiefs of chiefs are buried in this area. Chiefs of all over, from everywhere. The Arlington Cemetery is one of the largest cemeteries in the US, and never, ever would they build a pipeline through that cemetery. So we began to see so many different aspects pop up at Standing Rock. It wasn't just environmental, it started to become political, social, sexual. The idea that two-spirit people were being invited into the community as a part of the community was beautiful. My sexuality was never even in question. No one even asked me. They just didn't care. Our level of inclusivity there was amazing. To see so many different people coming to the table and being brought to do one specific thing was truly amazing. We all experienced the brutality of the police force. This was the very first action that I attended, which was about 4 or 5 days into me being there. This water is freezing, frigid, absolutely cold. And all of the women that you see in the front are under the age of 25. Some of them, I believe, were like 17, 18. And to watch these police officers walk by these women and these kids and spray them with a smile on their face is one of the most disturbing things that I've ever seen in my life. Happy. That's bringing joy to them. Before the age of 18, I had had many guns pointed at me by police officers. Very traumatizing experiences, but nothing could prepare me for what I saw there. So, fast forward a little bit in the future, and the International Indigenous Youth Council decides to lead a silent march. We changed the game. We reminded everybody, we are not here in violence. We are not here to fight the police. We are here to protect our water. We are not here to bring down the government. We are not here to say that blue lives don't matter. That is not the fight that we're addressing at this point. So we did an action that showed our discipline and our unity. And in silence, we marched from the camp all the way to Backwater Bridge with our sacred water. And we put in our way, when we do many sacred things, we take a virgin with us to represent that purity of life. These, women are water. There's no coincidence that for 9 months of our life, we're submerged in water. So we put that first to show these police, we're not here to be violent. When we go to war, we don't take our kids with us. The Akichita, Tokala doesn't do that. The warrior society doesn't do that. So we went in peace, and we offered the police officers water, and we told them, this is life, and without this, nothing can exist. Most of them denied it, but one of them took it, and he drank it, and he prayed with us. From that point on, the International Indigenous Youth Council became a force to be reckoned with. And everybody in the camp and everybody, I didn't know around the world, but around the world began to notice us. Because for the first time, youth were being invited to a political table where we weren't just there because we're young and we need to even out the playing field, but we were there because they actually wanted to know what we thought. They wanted to know what our take on it was. How can we spin this and make it that much better? Most of the time, people like to say that a silent child is a good child. Well, I'm here to say that that's not true. And I beg everybody who is in the older generations to please stop pushing us down. Please stop telling us that we are not good enough. Please stop telling us that we don't have what it takes. Please stop telling us that we need to stop. Stop telling us that Generation X or millennials aren't good enough, because we're listening. And we feel it. And in this case, they empowered us. They gave us a spot at the table. And we took it and we ran with it. And the International Indigenous Youth Council is still an organization. Of all the organizations that were started at Standing Rock, the International Indigenous Youth Council is the one that continues to stay rooted in what we came from. So fast forward to November 20th, Backwater Bridge. I got out of a pretty important meeting with some of the council that was there, and the youth council were given 3 camps. We had a north camp, we had a camp to the farthest south, and then a camp to the farthest east. We had what Red Warrior Camp called a tactical advantage. So I'm walking, my particular yurt was in our farthest north camp, and I'm walking towards our camp when I start to see an influx and a huge group of people walking down the bridge. At this point in time, the bridge had been completely barricaded and militarized. So we had asked people not to go down there because every time they went down there, they'd pretty much get the police all riled up for no reason. So I saw that, and then once the sun went down, you could feel the explosions in the ground, and you could hear them just right over the hill. When I first went to camp, it was dark out, and I remember seeing millions of stars in the Milky Way. And they had set up about 24 floodlights, and they pointed them at the camp, which completely got rid of the night sky. There were no more stars. Helicopters began to come. There were what usually was one helicopter or one crop duster constantly surveillancing us turned into about 3 or 4, surrounding us constantly. You began to hear what sounded like bullets going off, screams. People were screaming. And I didn't really want to be a part of it. I didn't really want to see it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want my kids, my brothers and sisters, to see that. Of course, you're not going to stop most of these kids from running to a front line, though. If there's a front line, they're going to be at it. So some of them were there, and they actually used the very water that we were protecting against us. In North Dakota, the nights can drop to -60 degrees. This night was maybe -20, -30 degrees. And they sprayed us with fire hoses. They put some agent in it, some chemical, that when the water hit us, it froze instantly. I had gotten word that a few of our members had been shot, and that one of them had been shot in the heart, and he had a seizure immediately. And they wanted to take him to the hospital, but he was refusing. So they came and got me and asked me to come get them and take them back to the yurt. So I went to the medics' tents area. And what I saw there will haunt me for the rest of my life. People's limbs were hanging off. People had been shot, people were bleeding, people were frozen. They had icicles on their face and on their nose, and just dripping, but they had blood on them. It was like frozen blood. And to see that, and to, this man, he had a hole in his head. He was bleeding everywhere. To hear the medics scream, "We have a bleeder! Take him over there!" And then to know that I couldn't react. Just wasn't the time to react. I had to push through. So I take our members back. He won't go to the hospital. I take them all back, I get him safe. And I go back to my yurt, which is right by where it was going on. I couldn't go to sleep. The bombs and the bullets stopped. The helicopters went away around 4:45 in the morning, 5 o'clock. I couldn't sleep, and I got maybe like a little nap when I was woken up by someone screaming outside of the yurt that there was an action in town and everybody needed to go. We as the International Indigenous Youth Council did not authorize an action. So I wanted to go because I wanted to know who this was and why they were doing it. Because we just experienced something that was very traumatic and no one else needed to be hurt. So I went into town with one of our sisters, Leah. And when I got there, it was disorganization. These people had just gotten here and wanted to be in the heat of an action. They asked me to lead the prayer. So being the person that I am, and who my father is, I led the prayer. We finished our action, and then they asked me to end with a prayer. I began praying, and in the middle of my prayer, Deputy Kirchmeyer, who's the deputy of the Bismarck, North Dakota Police Force, got out of his car, looked directly at me, pointed at me, and said, "Arrest him." 2 officers came and grabbed me, kicked me to the ground, and began to scream, "If you don't stop arresting, if you don't stop resisting, we will arrest everybody here, and we are not afraid to use live ammunition." So I sat there. I wasn't resisting, but I thought about it. What did your mom and dad teach you? They didn't teach me how to fight. I had to learn that on my own. My parents taught me how to pray. My parents taught me my way of life. And I knew that 500 years of being silenced by this oppressive force, 500 years of being pushed down by these people, 500 years of giving these people what they want ends now. You can have my body and do with it what you want, but you will never have my mind, my heart, or my soul. So I finished that prayer. I finished that prayer. And the proverb came into my head. No matter which way the wind howls, the mountain will never bow to it. In that moment, I understood what my grandpa Crow Dog and my dad told me when we were sundancing. They say, stand like a rock. Be like a rock, like a stone. And I never understood that. My whole life, I'm like, what do you mean be like a stone? But I understood it in that moment. I felt my ancestors rising through the ground underneath me. And I knew, even though I was going to be alone in this cell, even though I was going to do this alone, I wasn't alone. Everyone went on to their next action. No one got hurt. I spent about 15 hours in jail when they thought I was a minor, so I got good treatment, I guess. But the most disturbing thing about that experience was seeing the direct correlation and the direct similarities between our American prison system and our American school system. They are one and the same. It also really scared me to know that there were 8 of us in the cell, and 6 of the 8 were Native. I spoke to each one of these men personally and asked them who they were and why they weren't at Standing Rock. And I found out from most of them that about 90% of the prison populations in America are Indigenous. So one man went as far as to say, why do you believe that Standing Rock was started by women and youth? And I said, I don't know. He said, it's because our Akichita, our warrior society, has been imprisoned. We're in here. This movement is led by our women and our youth. The most empowering image I've ever seen is skirts running towards a front line. Powerful. What's so beautiful about this is that feminine energy. That putting down this masculine energy and allowing this feminine energy to rise. It's beautiful. And it has nothing to do with man, woman. We all have masculine and feminine energies. And right now it's time for us to allow these feminine energies to start coming forward and allowing us to make different decisions. That was the changing point for me too in Standing Rock. That's when I went from being kind of just like dad of the camp to I was now a frontliner. And that, what they call Thanksgiving in America, which is pretty much a celebration of the genocide of our people, turned into a huge action at Turtle Island, where on Turtle Island, the police force had set up a little base. And they told us that we couldn't go onto our sacred land, our sacred burial site. They told us we couldn't do that. Well, on this day, we took it back. We crossed that river. And we went over there. And we prayed. We called it Thanks-taking. That was the biggest action I had ever seen at Standing Rock. Thousands of people standing there face to face with oppression, with our fists in the air. And as much as they said, don't cross that river, we'll shoot you. Don't cross that river, we have live ammunition. Don't cross that river, you have no right. We didn't listen. And every time everybody on this side would get angry and start screaming at the police, shh, we'd silence them and ask them to calm down. Because that's what they want. They want you to be angry. They want you to feel that malice and that hatred that they feel, not only towards us, but towards themselves. Do not give them what they want. Sovereignty. It was beautiful. We showed those police that if we really wanted to come up there and take what we wanted, we could. We outnumber you 10-1. But we won't. After we lined and he made a huge prayer circle that took literally, there were cars parked, we had to go around the cars. So many people there. We showed our discipline. And that day I was very proud to be an Indigenous person, to be a two-spirit man, to come from my Mexica and my Lakota, my Diné, my Apache, my Otomi roots. It's really powerful to reclaim your identity. It's been one of the scariest but empowering things I've ever experienced in my life. Like I said a year ago, I really didn't know who I was, really didn't know where I was going. I thought I was going to be a broadcast journalist. But now, for the first time in my life, I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be. I know that I'm wearing the shoes that were made for me. And remember that behind every single one of us is 1 million ancestors just there to support you. And if you have that power with you, you take that energy with you. Anywhere that you go, you can do anything. The Dakota Access Pipeline currently has oil running through it. The Dakota Access Pipeline currently has oil running through it. And they have reimposed the Keystone XL pipeline, which is twice the size in diameter than the Dakota Access Pipeline. And will be going through the Ogallala Reservation. President Trump has recently signed an executive order allowing all national parks to be sold and exploited for corporate need. And sometimes it feels like we've lost. But then I think about all of the things that we've won. I think about the fact that over half of the indigenous tribes in North America came together for the first time in over 250 years. I think about how the first time in Indigenous history, a youth council has been brought to a table of power. I think about how our women took their identities back and took their chains off. I'm reminded of all the brothers and sisters that I now have. I think of all of the indigenous communities that write us every day and thank us. Thank us for inspiring them to stand up, to fight back. Because when you've been stripped of everything, you don't have anything left to lose. And we've been stripped of everything. the fight isn't over. It really has just begun. And the International Indigenous Youth Council still to this day is fighting. We've gone to almost every camp in America so far. We have a few more to go to. And we're really trying to figure out where we're needed the most. I am very honored, again, to be here to speak to all of you. I'm very thankful that you sat here to listen to my story, which is just one of so many. And I really hope that for the first time, you can see us as people. You can see us as human. We're not just a chapter in your history book or a footnote. We're not the Disney version of Pocahontas. We're people. We feel, we love, we get angry, we fight. But we're no different than you. And at the end of the day, if you stand for one group of people to have their rights taken away, eventually, your rights will be taken away too. And once no one else is there to stand up for you, what are you going to do? We have to come together. We have to unite. We have to understand that Black lives matter, that women are our equals, that children have something to offer, that the LGBTQ plus community has power. All of these movements, we're asking for the same thing. We're asking to be seen and heard. Thank you all so much. How are we on time? Okay, yeah, I thank you all so much. I want to end with just this short video that ABC did about the International Indigenous Youth Council, and then we can move to Q&A. Thank you all so much.